Welcome to our deep dive into Eckhart Tolle's The Power of Now. We're going to be, it sounds like you're interested in like really understanding spiritual enlightenment and how to just like be more present. And the excerpts you've given out of The Power of Now seem like a really great place to start. We're going to be looking at some pretty fascinating ideas, I think, about like what enlightenment is, the things that prevent us from being present, and maybe even some techniques for like actually tapping into that power of now. So are you ready to get started?
Absolutely. Yeah. It's pretty fascinating, actually, how Tolle approaches all of these concepts. And I think he starts with a premise that's both like really simple and radical, He argues that our minds, like, while they're incredibly useful tools, can very often be like the biggest obstacle to enlightenment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can see that. That resonates a lot with my own like experience. It's like we're surrounded by this inner peace and wisdom, but our minds are just constantly pulling us away from it.
Yeah.
Tolle uses that analogy of the beggar sitting on a box of gold, completely oblivious to the treasure that's right there beneath him. What do you make of that analogy?
I think it's a powerful image, It shows us how easily we overlook the wealth that's inside of us. We get so caught up in the drama of our thoughts, right? Just this endless stream of worries and desires and judgments. And because of that, we completely miss the peace and the stillness that's always available. So Tolle is arguing that we make a mistake by identifying with all that mental chatter, creating what he calls this false sense of self, which he calls the ego.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So it's not about like getting rid of our minds altogether, right? It's more about seeing through the illusion that our thoughts are who we truly are.
Exactly. He's not advocating it like for mindless existence, right?
Right.
He acknowledges that our minds are amazing tools. They help us navigate the world. They're there for creating and problem solving and connecting with others. The problem is that when we become so entangled with our thoughts, we lose touch with the present moment. We lose touch with the deeper reality of who we are beyond all that mental noise.
Yeah, that makes me think about how often people try to find themselves through their accomplishments or possessions or even relationships.
Yeah.
But it sounds like what Tolle is saying is that true self-discovery isn't about what we do or have, but about who we are at our core, like in the stillness of the present moment.
That's a great insight, yeah. He really emphasizes that true fulfillment can't be found in external things or in achievements. It's only in the realization of our true nature, which is pure consciousness, pure being. And this realization, it's not something that you achieve through, striving or effort. It's something that we already are. It's simply a matter of uncovering it.
Okay, well then how do we even begin to uncover this true nature? Like what are some of the obstacles that we have to overcome?
Well, I think one of the first things that Tolle talks about is the mind's tendency to dwell in the past and future, neglect of the present moment.
Mm-hmm.
He also introduces a concept that you mentioned you were curious about, which is the pain body.
Yes.
He describes it as like an accumulation of past emotional pain that we carry around in our minds and bodies.
Oh, okay. So it's not just like our current thoughts and emotions. It's all that baggage we've accumulated, over time, all those hurts and traumas and unresolved conflicts that we haven't fully processed.
Exactly. And he argues that, this pain body, it can have a powerful influence on our thoughts and our emotions, our behavior, even if we're not consciously aware of it.
Yeah. Okay.
So it can manifest in a lot of different ways, from negative self-talk to, emotional reactivity to even addictive behaviors and physical ailments.
Oh, wow. That makes me think about like how often we repeat the same patterns in our lives,
Yeah.
We attract the same types in relationships or the same situations, even when like consciously we want something different. Could that be the pain body at work?
Yeah, it's certainly possible. I mean, Tolle suggests that the pain body really tries to perpetuate itself.
Mm-hmm.
It draws energy from negativity, from unconsciousness. It's like this energy field that's constantly looking for confirmation of its own pain. So it creates like drama and conflict in our lives to do that.
So how do we break free from this pain body? How do we get out of its grips on our lives?
Yeah, Tolle really emphasizes becoming conscious of it.
Okay.
It's like he says, shining a light on the darkness. bringing awareness to those unconscious patterns that are driving our behavior.
But wouldn't that be like a painful process?
Yeah.
To actually like confront all that unresolved pain and trauma?
It can be challenging, but Tolle argues that it's really essential for true healing and liberation. And he emphasizes approaching the pain body with compassion, with non-judgment. Recognize it's a part of us that needs healing. It's not something to be afraid of or rejected.
It's not about like trying to get rid of the pain body. It's about learning to relate to it differently.
Exactly. Tolle suggests that by becoming aware of it and bringing, presence into the pain, we can actually transmute it, like transform that negative energy into something positive and life-affirming.
Okay, so that's where the whole power of now comes in, right?
Yeah.
How does being present help us deal with this pain body?
Well, Tolle argues that the pain body, it thrives on identification with the past and the future, on the stories we tell ourselves about, who we are and what's happened to us.
So it's like we're constantly reliving past hurts or worrying about future scenarios, and that's what keeps the pain body alive and well.
Yeah, exactly. But when we bring our attention fully into the present moment, we create a space where the pain body just can't exist.
It's like we're cutting off its energy supply by shifting our focus to the now.
Precisely. Tolle really emphasizes that, this present moment is the only place where true peace and liberation can be found. It's the only place where we can connect with our true nature, which is, beyond the pain body and the ego.
It reminds me of something you said earlier, about how the mind is constantly trying to escape the present moment.
Right.
It's like we're almost addicted to thinking, to analyzing, to planning, reminiscing, anything but just like being present with what is.
Yeah, that's a great observation. Tolle points out that the mind is always looking to escape the now. It'll dwell in the past or project itself into the future.
And in doing so, it creates like all this unnecessary suffering.
Absolutely. A lot of our anxiety, fear, dissatisfaction, it stems from this preoccupation with time. We create all this mental drama around past events that we can't change and future scenarios that haven't even happened yet.
Right. So it's not that thinking is inherently bad, right? It's that we need to learn to use our minds more consciously, to choose when to engage in thought and when to just like be present.
That's a great way to put it. He emphasizes that the mind is a powerful tool, but it needs to be used skillfully, like, a surgeon's scalpel.
Right.
I mean, you wouldn't want a surgeon operating on you with a scalpel that's like flailing about, would you?
Definitely not.
Right. You want that surgeon to be precise and focused and intentional.
Right.
And Tolle's suggesting we need to approach our minds in the same way.
But how do we develop that like mastery over our minds? It's like they have a mind of their own.
Yeah, it's true. Tolle, he offers a number of different practices for cultivating presence and for quieting the mind. They range from really simple techniques like focusing on the breath to, more in-depth practices like meditation and self-inquiry. And he emphasizes, becoming aware of that tendency that the mind has to escape the present moment and then generally bringing your attention back to whenever you notice it drifting off into thought.
So it's not about like suppressing our thoughts or trying to like force ourselves to be present.
Right.
It's more about like cultivating this gentle awareness of what's happening within us and choosing to align ourselves with the present moment.
Exactly. It's a practice. It's a process of gradually shifting our habitual patterns and awakening to the power of now.
This makes me think about all the different ways that we try to avoid being present, like, constantly checking our phones or overworking or numbing ourselves with, food or alcohol or entertainment.
Yeah.
We're terrified of just being with ourselves in this moment.
Yeah, and Tolle addresses that, directly.
Yeah.
He suggests that, we often resist the present moment because it doesn't meet our expectations or because we're afraid to face what's really there.
So it's not that the present moment is inherently like bad or painful. It's just that we've built up all this resistance to it based on our past experiences and our fear of the unknown.
Precisely. And what Tolle challenges us to do is to drop our defenses and surrender to what is, to the isness of what is, and to discover the peace and freedom that lies on the other side of that surrender.
That reminds me of something else said earlier, this concept of dying before you die. What does that mean in the context of the power of now?
It's a really powerful practice that Tolle describes, and it's a way to liberate ourselves from the fear of death and to live more fully in the present moment. And it involves consciously facing, the reality of our own mortality, recognizing that our physical bodies are impermanent, that we will all eventually die.
That sounds kind of intense.
Yeah.
Why would we want to contemplate our own death? Isn't that kind of morbid?
Tolle suggests that by confronting our fear of death, we can actually free ourselves from its grip. He argues that the fear of death is often what drives our clinging to possessions, relationships, and identities. As if we could somehow hold on to these things forever.
So by recognizing the impermanence of everything, we can kind of release our attachment to those things and live more fully in the present moment, knowing that this moment is all we truly have.
Exactly. It's about shifting our perspective from one of fear and scarcity to one of gratitude and abundance. When we embrace the impermanence of life, we can appreciate the beauty and the preciousness of each moment. We don't have to cling to it or try to make it last forever.
Right. It's like that saying, this too shall pass, whether it's a moment of joy or a moment of sorrow. It's all ultimately fleeting, and recognizing that can help us to be more present and just appreciate the richness of experience. But what about the pain body? Doesn't that get in the way of experiencing this peace and presence?
Well, that's where Tolle's insights about the pain body become even more profound. He argues that the pain body, it thrives on our identification with our thoughts and emotions, on the stories that we tell ourselves about, who we are and what's happened to us.
So it's like we're constantly fueling the pain body with our own negativity.
Exactly, yeah. But when we bring our attention fully into the present moment, we create a space where the pain body can't exist. It's like we're cutting off its energy supply by shifting our focus to the now.
This reminds me of something you said earlier, about how the mind uses negativity and suffering as a way to avoid the present moment. It's like we'd rather cling to our pain than face the uncertainty of the unknown.
Yeah, that's a great connection. Tolle suggests that we often choose suffering because it feels familiar.
Mm-hmm.
It can even feel comforting in a strange way. And it becomes part of our identity, our story of who we are.
But he's not saying that we should just ignore or suppress our pain, is he?
Definitely not. No, he emphasizes the importance of acknowledging our pain, of allowing ourselves to feel it fully, but without getting lost in it. He distinguishes between the pain itself and the suffering that we create around the pain through our resistance and our identification with it.
So it's not about denying or suppressing our emotions. It's about becoming aware of them and choosing to be present with them without letting them control us.
Precisely. And Tolle offers some practical techniques, for cultivating this awareness and presence. Things like, focusing on routine activities, observing the breath, and becoming aware of the space and the silence around us.
So it's about finding these little portals into the now throughout our day. Just those moments where we can drop out of our heads and connect with the present moment through our senses.
Exactly. Those seemingly mundane moments can become really powerful opportunities, for cultivating presence and for accessing a deeper level of awareness.
This brings us to another concept you mentioned that I was curious about, the unmanifested. It sounds pretty mysterious. So Tolle describes it as this formless, timeless source of everything. Can you help us understand what that means and why it's important?
Yeah, sure. It's a profound concept, and it points to the underlying reality from which everything arises. You can think of it as this pure consciousness that exists prior to thought and form, the source from which all creation springs forth.
So it's not like a place or a thing. It's more like a state of being, a pure potentiality.
Exactly, yeah. Tolle suggests that the unmanifested, it's always present, but it's often obscured by the activity of our minds, by our identification with the world of form. He argues that by quieting the mind and cultivating presence, we can access this deeper dimension of reality.
So it's like the unmanifested is always there, but we need to create space within ourselves to actually experience it.
That's a beautiful way to put it, yeah. And Tolle suggests that there are certain gateways or portals that allow us to access this dimension more readily.
Oh, that's fascinating. What are some of those portals into the unmanifested?
Well, he mentions a couple, including dreamless sleep, the cessation of thinking, surrender, and even the contemplation of space and silence.
Wow, that's a lot to unpack.
Yeah.
Maybe we can start by exploring one of those portals, like dreamless sleep. How is that a gateway into the unmanifested?
Well, Tolle suggests that in dreamless sleep, our minds are completely still. We merge with the source, drawing from it this vital energy that sustains us when we, return to the waking state.
So even though we're not consciously aware of it, we're connecting with that deeper reality every night.
Exactly, yeah. And he points out that this connection is essential for our well-being, both physically and spiritually.
It's like we're constantly being like replenished and renewed by this deeper source, even when we're not aware of it.
Precisely, and Tolle suggests that by becoming more conscious of this connection, we can tap into that source more fully and experience greater peace and vitality in our lives.
This makes me wonder, like, what it would be like to consciously enter into that realm of dreamless sleep, to actually experience that merging with the source while we're awake. Is that even possible?
Tolle suggests that it's impossible to imagine what that would be like, because that state has no content.
Oh.
It's the realm of pure being, beyond thought and form. Our minds can't really grasp it because the mind itself arises from that formlessness.
So it's beyond our comprehension from our current state of consciousness.
Exactly. But he does suggest that we can access a similar state through other portals, like the cessation of thinking.
Well, that sounds like a challenge.
Yeah.
Our minds are constantly chattering away. How do we make them stop?
Well, Tolle, he doesn't suggest that we try to force our minds to be quiet. He acknowledges that the mind is a powerful force. And trying to fight it directly can often be, counterproductive.
Okay.
Instead, he suggests cultivating a gentle awareness of our thoughts, noticing when our minds are pulling us away from the present moment, and then gently bringing our attention back to the... Now, whenever we notice ourselves drifting off into thought.
So it's more about like creating a space for stillness to arise naturally rather than trying to force it.
Exactly. And he suggests that, practices like meditation can be helpful in cultivating this awareness and creating that inner space.
This makes me think about all the like different meditation techniques that are out there. Does Tolle recommend a particular approach?
He's not really dogmatic about any specific technique.
Okay.
He suggests finding a practice that resonates with you and just making it a regular part of your life. But he does emphasize going beyond technique and simply being present with what is.
So it's not about trying to like achieve a certain state or have a particular experience. It's about just allowing ourselves to be in the present moment, whatever that may look like.
Precisely. And he suggests that this simple act of being present can be the most profound meditation of all.
This brings us to another portal that he mentioned, surrender. So what does Tolle mean by surrender, and how does it lead to the unmanifested?
Well, surrender, as Tolle describes it, is about letting go of our resistance to what is and aligning ourselves with the flow of life. It's about recognizing that we're not in control of everything and that there's a wisdom at work in the universe that's far greater than our own limited perspective.
So it's not about like giving up or becoming passive. It's about shifting our relationship to life from one of control and resistance to one of trust and acceptance.
That's a great way to put it. Tolle emphasizes that surrender isn't about denying our desires or resigning ourselves to a life of mediocrity. It's about releasing our attachment to outcomes and embracing the present moment, trusting that life will unfold as it's meant to.
It sounds like surrender is about finding a balance between action and non-action, between effort and allowing.
That's a great insight. Yeah, Tolle acknowledges that we still need to take action in the world, but he suggests that when our actions are grounded in surrender, they're more aligned with the flow of life and therefore more effective.
Yeah, it's like when we're trying to force something to happen, we often just create more resistance and obstacles.
Right.
But when we surrender to the present moment and allow things to unfold naturally, there's a sense of ease and flow.
Exactly. And Tolle argues that this sense of ease and flow, it's a sign that we're aligned with the wisdom of the universe.
Mm-hmm.
That we're tapping into a power that's greater than our own limited ego.
It makes me wonder how we can practice surrender in everyday life. It's easy to talk about it in theory, but how do we actually apply it when we're faced with challenges or setbacks?
Well, Tolle suggests that surrender begins with becoming aware of our resistance patterns.
Okay.
And he encourages us to notice the thoughts, the emotions, the physical sensations that arise when we're resisting what is, whether it's a traffic jam or a difficult conversation or even a health challenge.
So it's about becoming more mindful of our reactions and noticing when we're clinging to things or trying to control outcomes.
Exactly. And once we become aware of those patterns, we can start to gently loosen their grip on us. Tolle suggests practices like mindfulness, meditation, and self-inquiry, as tools for cultivating this awareness and creating space for surrender to arise.
It's like we're creating a pause button in our minds, a space where we can choose a different response instead of just reacting automatically.
That's a great way to put it. And Tolle emphasizes that the more we practice surrender, the more it becomes our natural state of being.
So it's not about achieving some perfect state of surrender. It's about gradually cultivating this quality in our lives.
Exactly. It's a journey, a process of awakening to a deeper level of trust and acceptance.
That sounds like surrender is really about aligning ourselves with the present moment, with the reality of what is. And that's a perfect segue into our next topic, Tolle's perspective on the power of the now. So what does he mean by that, and how does it relate to the concept of surrender?
Yeah, well, Tolle, he argues that the present moment is the only place where true power exists.
Mm-hmm.
And he suggests that when we're fully present, we tap into this source of creativity and wisdom and even joy that's beyond the reach of the thinking mind.
So it's not about denying the past or the future. It's about recognizing that the only place where life is actually happening is in this moment right now.
Exactly. He emphasizes that the past is gone, the future is just a mental projection, and the present moment is all we truly have.
Yeah, this makes me think about how often we miss out on the beauty and the richness of life because we're lost in thought, dwelling on the past or worrying about the future.
That's a great observation. Tolle suggests that when we're preoccupied with time, we create this barrier between ourselves and the aliveness of the present moment.
So it's not that time is inherently bad. It's that our attachment to it, our obsession with it, creates a sense of separation and prevents us from fully experiencing life.
Exactly. And he argues that when we shift our attention from time to presence, we reconnect with the source of life itself.
This reminds me of something else you mentioned earlier, this concept of portals into the unmanifested. It sounds like those portals are all about accessing a deeper level of presence, whether it's through, dreamless sleep or the cessation of thinking or surrender.
That's a great connection. Tolle suggests that, these portals, they're different pathways to the same destination, which is the realization of our true nature as pure consciousness, as pure being.
And that realization is only possible in the present moment, right?
Exactly. Tolle, he argues that the past and the future, they're just thoughts, while the present moment is the only reality.
This makes me wonder how we can cultivate more presence in our lives.
Right.
It's one thing to understand the importance of being present, but how do we actually make it a reality in our busy, often chaotic lives?
Well, Tolle offers a number of practical suggestions. They range from simple techniques like focusing on our breath or paying attention to our senses to more in-depth practices like meditation and self-inquiry.
So there's a path for everyone, regardless of their experience or background.
Exactly, yeah. He emphasizes, starting where we are and being patient with ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
He also stresses the importance of finding a practice that resonates with us and making it a regular part of our lives.
So consistency is key.
Absolutely. Just like, you wouldn't expect to build physical strength without regular exercise.
Yeah.
We can't expect to cultivate inner peace and presence without consistent practice.
Yeah, this makes me think about how Tolle describes the mind as being like a wild river.
Mm-hmm.
And if we're not grounded within ourselves, it can easily sweep us away.
Yes, and he suggests that, practices like meditation and inner body awareness can help us to create that inner stability and stillness.
So it's about creating that space within where we can observe the mind's activity without getting caught up in it.
Precisely. And from that space of stillness, we can we can access a deeper level of wisdom and awareness.
Well, this is a great starting point, but we've only just scratched the surface of the power of now.
Yeah.
There's so much more to explore. Are you ready to dive a little deeper?
Absolutely, yeah. Let's keep exploring. It's amazing how Cole wrote The Power of Now, before the rise of the internet and smartphones and everything. But he so accurately predicted how our minds would become addicted to information. He argues that this constant influx of information can actually hinder our spiritual growth.
It's like we're drowning in information but starving for wisdom. I know I've definitely fallen into that trap of thinking, if I just read enough books or listen to enough podcasts, I'll somehow become enlightened.
Right.
But it sounds like what Tolle's saying is that true enlightenment isn't about accumulating knowledge, but about directly experiencing reality as it is.
Exactly, yeah. He argues that true knowledge, it arises from the stillness of the present moment, not from the accumulation of facts and figures.
Okay.
He sees the mind's, obsession with information as just another way to avoid facing the present moment,
Mm-hmm.
to create this sense of busyness and distraction that keeps us from connecting with our true nature.
This makes me think about all the time that I spend scrolling through social media, feeling like I need to stay informed about everything that's happening in the world, but it often leaves me feeling more anxious and disconnected than ever before.
Yeah. Huh.
Perhaps that's because I'm looking for fulfillment in external information rather than turning inward, to connect with that source of peace and wisdom that's already within me.
That's a profound insight. Yeah. Tolle, he suggests that true fulfillment, it can only be found in the realization of our true nature as pure consciousness. And he argues that this realization, it's available to us in every moment, if only we can quiet our minds and drop our defenses.
Speaking of defenses, you mentioned earlier that Tolle, he sees the ego as this false self created by our identification with our thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
Can you elaborate on that and explain how the ego uses different strategies to avoid the present moment?
Sure. The ego, as Tolle describes it, it's essentially a collection of thought patterns and beliefs about who we are that we've accumulated over time.
Right.
It's like a mask that we wear to protect ourselves from the world,
Mm-hmm.
to create this sense of separation and control.
It's not that the ego is inherently bad, but it can become a prison that keeps us trapped in limiting beliefs and patterns of behavior.
Exactly, yeah. Tolle, he argues that the ego is constantly seeking to reinforce its own existence, to solidify its sense of self.
Mm-hmm.
And it does this by employing a number of strategies to avoid the present moment, where its illusion of separateness would dissolve.
Oh, that's fascinating. What are some of the strategies that the ego uses?
Well, one common strategy is complaining. The ego loves to dwell on what's wrong with the world, with other people, and even with itself. It finds a perverse kind of pleasure in negativity and suffering.
It's we get addicted to feeling righteous indignation or self-pity.
Exactly. And complaining keeps us trapped in this cycle of negativity that prevents us from experiencing the peace and the joy of the present moment. Another strategy the ego uses is worrying. It loves to project itself into the future, creating all sorts of anxieties and fears about what might happen.
Yeah, it's our minds are constantly running through worst case scenarios,
Yeah.
Creating this sense of dread and unease that prevents us from fully enjoying, the present moment.
Exactly. Tolle suggests that a lot of our suffering, it stems from this habit of worrying, from believing the stories that our minds create about the future. He encourages us to challenge those stories, to question the assumptions that underlie them, and to bring our attention back to the present moment, where those fears have no power.
So it's not about denying our worries or pretending that everything is perfect, but about recognizing that our worries are just thoughts, not reality.
That's a key insight, yeah. Tolle, he argues that our thoughts, they have no power over us unless we give them power through our belief and our attention.
Another strategy that I see the ego's using in my own life is comparing myself to others.
Yeah.
It's like I'm constantly measuring myself against some imaginary standard, which always leaves me feeling inadequate.
Yeah, that's a common trap that the ego sets for us. It loves to create this sense of separation and competition, to make us feel like we're not enough.
Mm-hmm.
But Tolle, he reminds us that each of us is unique, and that there's no need to compare ourselves to others. He
Right.
encourages us to embrace our own individuality, and to celebrate the diversity of human experience.
So it's not about denying our strengths or weaknesses, but about recognizing that we're all perfectly imperfect, exactly as we are in this moment.
Beautifully put, yeah. Tolle, he argues that true self-acceptance is the foundation for inner peace and happiness.
This makes me think about another strategy that the ego uses to avoid the present moment, which is seeking distractions.
Mm-hmm.
It's like we're constantly looking for something to fill like the void within us, whether it's through entertainment or work or shopping or even relationships.
Yeah, that's a great observation. Tolle suggests that the ego, it's terrified of stillness, of facing the emptiness within, because it senses that its own illusion of separateness would dissolve in that emptiness.
So it keeps us busy and distracted, constantly seeking like something outside ourselves to validate our existence.
Exactly. And he arguing that these distractions, they only provide like temporary relief. True fulfillment, it can only be found by turning inward, by connecting with the source of peace and joy that's already within us.
Yeah, it's like we're running away from ourselves, but the only way to find true happiness is to stop running, to embrace the present moment with all its imperfections and uncertainties.
That's a powerful insight. Tolle emphasizes that the present moment, it's all we truly have. The past is gone, the future is uncertain, and this moment is all that's real.
And by embracing this moment, we open ourselves to a deeper level of awareness and connection that transcends the limitations of the ego.
Exactly. Tolle argues that the ego, it's constantly trying to control, to manipulate reality, to fit its own limited perspective. But when we surrender to the present moment, we allow life to unfold as it's meant to, without resistance or judgment.
Yeah, it's like we're saying yes to life, to all of it, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And in that acceptance, we find this sense of peace and freedom that the ego can never provide.
That's a beautiful way to put it. Tolle suggests that true happiness, it's not about getting what we want, but about accepting what is. It's about finding contentment in the present moment, regardless of the circumstances.
This makes me think about how often we resist change, even when it's for the better.
Yeah.
It's like we cling to the familiar, even if it's causing us, pain, because it's what we know.
Yeah, that's a common human tendency. Tolle, he argues that change is an inevitable part of life, and that resisting change only creates suffering. He encourages us to embrace change, to see it as an opportunity for growth and transformation.
So it's not about trying to control every aspect of our lives, but about learning to flow with the river of change, to trust that life is unfolding as it's meant to.
Exactly. And he suggests that this trust is the key to experiencing true peace and freedom.
This brings up another question about how we relate to our own mortality.
Right.
Tolle encourages us to die before we die. What does that mean in the context of the power of now?
It's a powerful practice that Tolle describes as a way to liberate ourselves from the fear of death and to live more fully in the present moment. It involves, consciously facing the reality of our own mortality, recognizing that our physical bodies are impermanent, that we will all eventually die.
That sounds a little intense. Why would we want to contemplate our own death? Isn't that kind of like morbid?
Well, Tolle suggests that by confronting our fear of death, we can paradoxically see ourselves from its grip. He argues that the fear of death is often what drives are clinging to possessions, relationships, identities, as if we could somehow hold on to these things forever.
So by recognizing the impermanence of everything, we can release our attachment to those things and live more fully in the present moment, knowing that this moment is all we truly have.
Exactly. It's about, shifting our perspective from one of fear and scarcity to one of gratitude and abundance. When we embrace the impermanence of life, we can appreciate the beauty and the preciousness of each moment without, clinging to it or trying to make it last forever.
It's like that saying, "This too shall pass."
Yeah.
Whether it's a moment of joy or a moment of sorrow, it's all ultimately fleeting, and recognizing that can help us to be more present and just appreciate a richness of experience. But if we're constantly bombarded with information and distractions, how do we even begin to create space for this kind of like awareness and presence?
That's a great question. And Tolle, he acknowledges that it can be challenging to cultivate presence in our modern world, where we're constantly being pulled in a million different directions.
Right.
But he also emphasizes that it's more important now than ever before.
Because if we're not grounded in the present moment, we're easily swept away by the chaos and the negativity of the world around us.
Exactly. Tolle suggests that cultivating presence is not only essential for our own well-being, but also for the well-being of the planet.
So it's not just about like personal enlightenment. It's about creating a more conscious and compassionate world.
Absolutely. Tolle, he argues that as more and more individuals, awaken to the power of now we create this ripple effect that can transform our collective consciousness.
It's like we're all like interconnected.
Yeah.
And our individual choices and action have a profound impact on the world around us.
That's a key insight. Tolle, he emphasizes that we're not separate from each other or from the planet. We're all part of one interconnected web of life.
This makes me think about another portal into the unmanifested that Tolle mentions. The contemplation of space and silence. How can we use those concepts to access a deeper level of presence and connection?
Well, Tolle suggests that space and silence, they're external reflections of the inner space and silence of pure being.
So by contemplating the vastness of the sky or the stillness of a quiet room, we can connect with that deeper dimension within ourselves.
Exactly. He argues that our minds are constantly, creating noise and clutter, and that by focusing on space and silence, we can create a clearing within ourselves where the unmanifested can shine through.
It's like we're creating a space for the divine to reveal itself.
That's a beautiful way to put it. And Tolle emphasizes that these portals, they're not separate or independent, but interconnected aspects of the same reality.
So whether we're meditating or surrendering or contemplating space and silence, we're essentially accessing the same source of peace and wisdom.
Exactly. And he suggests that the more we explore these portals, the more we realize that the unmanifested, it isn't something separate from us, but our very essence, the ground of our being.
It sounds like all these practices are about stripping away the layers of conditioning and illusion that separate us from our true nature.
That's a great way to put it. Tolle argues that we're all essentially divine beings, but we've forgotten our true nature.
Right.
And he suggests that the path to enlightenment is about remembering who we truly are.
Yeah, it's like we're on a journey of self-discovery, uncovering the truth that's always been present within us.
That's a beautiful metaphor. Tolle, he emphasizes that the journey to enlightenment, it's not about becoming someone else, but about rediscovering our true selves.
You mentioned earlier that Tolle, he sees qi as a bridge between the manifested world and the unmanifested. Can you elaborate on that?
Sure. He describes qi as the the vital life force or energy that flows through all things. It's the energy that animates the universe, the force that connects us all.
Oh, it's like the energy that animates the universe.
Exactly, yeah. And he suggests that this energy has its source in the unmanifested, flowing from that formless realm into the world of form.
So by connecting with our own, chi, we're tapping into that deeper source.
Yes, he talks about, practices like Qigong and Tai Chi as ways to cultivate and harmonize our chi and to connect with that deeper dimension of reality.
This makes me think about how, like, different cultures, they have different names and concepts for this vital life force, like, prana in yoga or ki in Japanese martial arts.
Exactly. And Tolle, he acknowledges that these different traditions are essentially pointing to the same reality, the same life force that animates all of creation.
Yeah, it's like we're all connected to this source of energy, but we often forget about it or take it for granted.
Yes, and he encourages us to become more, aware of this life force within ourselves and to cultivate it through practices like meditation, mindful breathing, and spending time in nature.
So it's about recognizing the sacredness of our own bodies and the interconnectedness of all things.
Absolutely, yeah. And he suggests that as we become more attuned to this life force, we naturally become more aligned with the flow of the universe and experience greater peace and well-being.
This brings up another fascinating aspect of the power of now, Tolle's perspective on relationships. He makes a bold statement that true love is the love of God. What does he mean by that, and how can we cultivate this kind of love in our lives?
Well, he suggests that love in its purest form is the recognition of our oneness with all beings, a reflection of the divine love that flows through all of creation.
So it's not about like romantic love or even the love between family members, but about a deeper, more universal love that embraces like all beings.
Exactly. He argued that true love, it isn't possessive or conditional, but a state of being that arises from the realization of our interconnectedness.
Yeah, it's like when we connect with that deeper level within ourselves, we naturally extend that love and connection to others.
That's a beautiful way to put it. And Tolle, he suggests that this love, it's the essence of enlightenment, the realization of our true nature as divine beings.
But that sounds like a tall order.
Yeah.
How do we even begin to cultivate that kind of love in a world that's so full of conflict and division?
Well, Tolle acknowledges that it's not always easy to love unconditionally, especially when we're faced with those who have hurt us or who hold different beliefs than our own. But he also emphasizes that it's possible, and that it's the only true path to peace and happiness.
So it's not about pretending that everything is okay or ignoring, the real pain and suffering in the world, but about choosing to respond to those challenges with love and compassion rather than fear and judgment.
Exactly. Tolle, he argues that true love, it isn't about ignoring the darkness, but about bringing the light of awareness to it, transforming it from within.
It's like we're holding space for both the light and the shadow, recognizing that both are part of the wholeness of life.
That's a beautiful way to put it. Tolle suggests that when we can embrace both the light and the shadow within ourselves and in others, we create space for true healing and transformation to occur.
This makes me think about another concept that Tolle, he emphasizes, the importance of dissolving the pain body.
Mm-hmm.
You talked earlier about how the pain body is this accumulation of past emotional pain that we carry in our minds and bodies. Can you elaborate on how we can go about like dissolving this pain body and freeing ourselves from its grip?
Sure. Tolle suggests that the pain body, It's like an energy field within us
Mm.
that's made up of all our past emotional pain and trauma.
Hmm.
It can manifest in a variety of ways, from negative thoughts and emotions to physical aches and pains.
So it's like this hidden reservoir of negativity that can like keep us stuck in cycles of suffering.
Exactly. And he argues that until we address the pain body, we'll continue to attract and create drama in our lives.
So it's not enough to just focus on being present. We also need to address the underlying pain and trauma that's driving our behavior.
That's a great insight. Tolle suggests that presence and pain body work, they go hand in hand.
So how do we go about dissolving the pain body and breaking free from the cycle?
Well, Tolle, he emphasizes the importance of becoming conscious of the pain body and bringing the light of our awareness to it.
So it's like we need to shine a light on this darkness within us and see it for what it is.
Yes, and he offers, specific techniques for doing this, such as, focusing our attention on the physical sensations of the pain body without getting caught up in the story or the emotions.
So it's about observing the pain body without judgment and allowing it to be there without resisting it.
Precisely. And he suggests that as we do this, the pain body will gradually lose its grip on us and eventually, dissolve.
This makes me think about how often we try to suppress or distract ourselves from our pain, whether it's through work or entertainment or even substances. But Tolle is saying that the only way to truly heal is to face our pain directly and allow ourselves to feel it fully.
That's the paradox he points to. Yeah, by running away from our pain, we actually give it more power.
Mm.
But when we turn towards it with awareness and with compassion, we create space for healing and transformation to occur.
Yeah, it's like we're integrating those shadow parts of ourselves rather than trying to pretend that they don't exist.
Exactly. And Tolle suggests that as we integrate those shadow parts, we become more whole and complete, more capable of experiencing true love and joy.
This reminds me of another key concept from The Power of Now, the importance of letting go of judgment.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk more about how judgment hinders our spiritual growth?
Sure. Tolle, he suggests that judgment is one of the primary ways that we create separation and conflict in our lives.
Okay.
When we judge ourselves or others, we're essentially, saying that we're not okay as we are, that we need to be different in some way. And this creates a sense of inner division and struggle.
So it's about like recognizing that our judgments are just thoughts, not absolute truths, and that they're often based on our own insecurities and limiting beliefs.
Exactly. Yeah. Tolle argues that when we judge others, we're essentially projecting our own unhealed wounds onto them.
It's like we're seeing the world through a distorted lens.
Precisely. And he challenges us to let go of that judgment and to see others with compassion and with understanding.
So it's about recognizing that we're all on this journey together and that we each have, our own struggles and triumphs.
That's a beautiful way to put it, yeah. And he emphasizes that this letting go of judgment, it's essential for creating a more peaceful and loving world.
This brings up another important point that Tolle makes about the importance of non-resistance. Can you explain what he means by that and how it relates to letting go of judgment?
Sure. He suggests that resistance is the root of much of our suffering.
Okay.
When we resist what is, we create conflict and tension within ourselves.
It's like we're pushing against the flow of life instead of allowing ourselves to be carried by it.
Exactly. And he argues that non-resistance, it doesn't mean becoming passive or giving up on our desires, but it does mean accepting the present moment as it is without trying to change it.
So it's about letting go of that struggle and allowing things to unfold naturally.
Precisely, yeah. And he emphasizes that this non-resistance is the key to experiencing true peace and freedom.
This makes me think about how often we try to control outcomes or force things to happen according to our will.
Yes, and Tolle, he challenges us to let go of that need for control and to trust in the wisdom of the universe.
So it's about surrendering to the present moment and allowing life to guide us.
Exactly. And he suggests that this surrender is the ultimate act of faith, as it requires us to let go of our limited perspective and to trust in a power that's greater than our own.
This reminds me of something else Tolle mentioned, the importance of becoming aware of the egos, like patterns and roles.
Mm-hmm.
Why is that important?
Well, he argues that by recognizing these patterns, we can start to disidentify from them and free ourselves from their grip.
So it's about like seeing through the illusions that our egos create.
Exactly. He suggests that the ego, it thrives on drama and conflict, and that by becoming aware of its strategies, we can choose to step out of those cycles.
This makes me think about how often we get caught up in blaming others or feeling like victims.
Yes, and Tolle, he challenges us to take responsibility for our own inner state,
Mm-hmm.
and to stop projecting our unhappiness onto others.
So it's about recognizing that we have the power to choose our response, even in challenging situations.
Absolutely, yeah. He emphasizes that true power comes not from controlling others, but from mastering ourselves.
This reminds me of something else Tolle mentioned, the concept of transforming suffering into peace. Can you explain like how that works?
Sure. He suggests that suffering, it arises from our resistance to what is, and that by surrendering to the present moment and accepting our pain, we can paradoxically transform it into peace.
That sounds counterintuitive. How can we find peace in suffering?
Well, Tolle argues that when we fully embrace our pain, we break the cycle of resistance, and we allow a deeper level of acceptance to emerge.
It's like by stopping the fight, we open ourselves to a new possibility.
Exactly, yeah. He describes it as a journey into death, where we let go of our attachments and we awaken to a reality that is beyond suffering.
This makes me think about all the ways that we try to avoid or to numb our pain, whether it's through, distractions or addictions or even positive thinking.
Yes, and Tolle, he argued that these strategies only delay the inevitable. He suggests that true healing comes from facing our pain directly and allowing ourselves to feel it fully.
So it's about moving through the pain rather than around it.
Exactly. And he emphasizes that there's a tremendous amount of power and wisdom that's available to us on the other side of that pain.
This makes me think about how often we resist change, even when it's for the better.
Yes, and Tolle, he challenges us to embrace the impermanence of life and to see change as an opportunity for growth and transformation.
Yeah, it's about recognizing that everything is in constant flux and that resisting that flow only creates, suffering.
Exactly. And he suggests that when we surrender to the present moment, we align ourselves with the wisdom of the universe. We realize that we're not separate from the flow of life, but an integral part of it.
It sounds like surrender is ultimately about aligning ourselves with that wisdom of the universe, recognizing that we're not separate from that flow of life, but an integral part of it. And that brings us back to this concept of the unmanifested, that formless, timeless source from which everything arises. You mentioned that there are different portals that can lead us to this deeper reality. Which of those portals like resonates most with you?
For me, it's the contemplation of space and silence. It's such a simple but profound practice. Just taking a few moments to gaze at the vastness of the sky or to sit in a quiet room can have a transformative effect on our consciousness.
Yeah, it's like we're creating a space for the noise of the mind to settle, allowing a deeper level of awareness to emerge.
Exactly. Tolle suggests that space and silence, they're They're external reflections of the inner space and silence of pure being.
Mm-hmm.
And by contemplating these qualities in the outer world, we can access them within ourselves.
This makes me think about how often we try to fill every moment with noise and activity, as if we're afraid of the silence within.
Yeah, and Tolle, he addresses that fear, directly. He suggests that we often resist silence because it confronts us with the emptiness of the ego.
Mm-hmm.
The ego thrives on noise and distraction, on the illusion of separateness. But in silence, that illusion begins to crumble.
So it's not that silence is inherently empty, but that it reveals the emptiness of the ego's claims to a separate self.
Precisely. Tolle argues that in silence we can connect with the fullness of being, the source of true peace and joy.
This reminds me of another portal into the unmanifested that you mentioned, surrender.
Yeah.
How does surrender relate to this experience of silence and fullness?
Well, surrender, as Tolle described it, is about letting go of our resistance to what is, aligning ourselves with the flow of life.
Okay.
It's about recognizing that we're not in control of everything, and that there's a wisdom at work in the universe that's far greater than our own limited, perspective.
So it's about releasing our attachment to outcomes and embracing the present moment, trusting that life will unfold as it's meant to.
That's a great way to put it. Tolle emphasizes that surrender isn't about, denying our desires or resigning ourselves to a life of mediocrity. It's about releasing our attachment to outcomes and embracing the present moment, trusting that life will unfold as it's meant to.
It sounds like surrender is about finding a balance between action and non-action, between effort and allowing.
That's a great insight, yeah. Tolle acknowledges that we still need to take action in the world, but he suggests that when our actions are grounded in surrender, they're more aligned with the flow of life and therefore more effective.
Yeah, it's like when we're trying to force something to happen, we often just create more resistance and obstacles.
Right.
But when we surrender to the present moment and allow things to unfold naturally, there's a sense of ease and flow.
Exactly. And Tolle argues that this sense of ease and flow, it's a sign that we're aligned with the wisdom of the universe, that we're tapping into a power that's greater than our own limited ego.
It makes me wonder how we can, practice surrender in everyday life. It's easy to talk about it, in theory, but how do we actually apply it when we're faced with challenges or setbacks?
Well, Tolle suggests that surrender begins with becoming aware of our resistance patterns.
Okay.
And he encourages us to notice the thoughts, the emotions, and the physical sensations that arise when we're resisting what is, whether it's a traffic jam or a difficult conversation or even a health challenge.
So it's about becoming more mindful of our reactions and noticing when we're clinging to things or trying to control, outcomes.
Exactly. And once we become aware of those patterns, we can begin to gently loosen their grip on us. Tolle, he suggests practices like mindfulness, meditation, and self-inquiry, as tools for cultivating this awareness and creating space for surrender to arise.
It's like we're creating a pause button in our minds. A space where we can choose a different response instead of just, reacting automatically.
That's a great way to put it. And Tolle emphasizes that the more we practice surrender, the more it becomes our natural state of being.
So it's not about achieving some kind of perfect state of surrender. It's about gradually cultivating this quality in our lives.
Exactly. It's a journey, a process of awakening to a deeper level of trust and acceptance. This reminds me of something else that Tolle mentioned, the power of positive action. Could you elaborate on that?
Sure. So Tolle talks about this idea of positive action. It's action that that arises from a place of inner alignment, from a place of peace and presence.
Hmm.
He distinguishes this from actions that are driven by the ego, which often stem from fear or lack or the desire for control. Positive action, on the other hand, it arises from a place of presence and alignment with our true nature.
So it's as if by letting go of our ego's need to manipulate and control, we tap into a more powerful source of creative energy.
That makes sense. It's like our actions become more effortless and effective when they're aligned with the flow of the universe.
Precisely. And Tolle, he emphasizes that this kind of action is essential for creating a more, peaceful and harmonious world.
Well, this has been an incredible deep dive into the power of now. We've explored some truly profound concepts, and I'm feeling a sense of both excitement and peace, as we wrap up. Is there a particular passage from the power of now that you find yourself like returning to again and again?
Yeah, there's one that has always resonated with me, and it's this. Realize deeply that the present moment is all you ever have. Make the now the primary focus of your life.
Mm-hmm.
It's such a, simple yet powerful reminder to embrace the fullness of this moment, to let go of the past and the future, and to discover the joy and peace that are always available to us.
It's a beautiful reminder that the power to transform our lives lies not in some distant future, but right here, right now.
Exactly. And I think that's the essence of Tolle's message. That enlightenment isn't some esoteric concept, reserved for a select few. It's a state of being that's accessible to anyone who chooses to awaken to the power of now.
Well, I hope this deep dive has provided you with a renewed sense of hope and inspiration on your journey of awakening. Remember, the present moment is all you ever have. Make now the primary focus of your life and see what miracles unfold